Fall 2016 SLO, Improving Student Performance with Feedback and Relationship Building by Ashley Tipton. Over the past 35 years, the United States has seen a major shift in its demographics. Compared to 1980, the white population has decreased by 6 percentage points, while the Black and Hispanic populations have increased by 1.6 and 11.2 percentage points respectively. This change in population is even more pronounced, however, in the nation's public school population. For the 2016-2017 school year, children who identify as minorities are estimated to constitute 44.9% of the nation's public school system. With such high numbers of historically minority students passing through the public school system, it is disturbing that there still exists an achievement gap between white students and students from minority backgrounds. Though the achievement gap in mathematics has narrowed slightly between white and Black students from 1978 to 1999, it has not significantly changed since then. The sciences, however, show an even larger gap than math or language arts. In 2011, the most recent data available, there was a 20.9% difference between scores of white and Black students, and a 16% score difference between white and Hispanic students in science, according to the nation's report card. This disparity has consequences for future work opportunities because STEM subjects are becoming integrated into a wide variety of career fields.
Those students of color comprise nearly 45% of the public school population. Only 16% of teachers are non-white. This cultural disparity between teachers and students has been suggested to be one of the many possible reasons for the achievement gap, as mainstream Western values reinforced in schools conflict with the values of minority and or non-Western cultures, creating a sense of alienation, shame, and exclusion.
Creating a sense of alienation, shame, and exclusion. To combat academic effects of pressuring minority students into conformity with mainstream Western cultures, culturally relevant pedagogy was developed to not only maintain and affirm students' cultural identities, but to teach to and through the strengths of ethnically diverse students. One of the overarching themes of CRP is building relationships with students in order to see them as individuals and to create a community of caring within the classroom. Forging good student-teacher relationships has long been known to have a positive impact on learning and achievement. When students feel safe, relaxed, and have a sense of belonging in the classroom, it allows them to focus more on academics, even when they experience difficulties in their lives outside of the classroom. In fact, Malinet et al. Showed that autonomous motivation in students increased throughout the school year when positive student-teacher relationships were built and maintained early. The question then is, how do teachers, especially those of different ethnic backgrounds in their students, create good student-teacher relationships? Expecting excellence from every student is one core value that promotes a good student-teacher relationship by empowering students' individual learning capacity, which is exemplified by allowing students to revise and resubmit assignments that do not meet expectations. Additionally, promoting open and honest communication allows students and teachers to engage in reflexive and collaborative dialogue, which makes students more receptive to feedback given by teachers on assignments. Feedback, when provided effectively, is another strategy for improving student performance and closing the achievement gap. Effective feedback is specific, explicit, and constructive. However, as Williams states, the only important thing about feedback is what students do with it. Often feedback is not perceived the same way by students and teachers. Teachers may believe their comments are clear, while students perceive them to be vague. Students may also feel a disconnect between the comments given and the grade received. These problems with feedback can be fixed in two ways: by providing feedback electronically or by meeting with students face-to-face. McGrath and Atkinson-Liederbrink showed that students prefer electronic feedback to written feedback because it is more legible, organized, and immediate. The same study also found that students perceived teachers wrote more comments when using electronic feedback compared to written comments, which not only provided additional clarification, but allowed instructors to provide feedback that had the potential to aid students on future assignments. It is not always possible, however, to provide electronic feedback in high school classrooms, and there is also the risk that students who are already achieving poorly may be discouraged by impersonal feedback. In these cases, face-to-face conferences that discuss written feedback may be preferable. Face-to-face conferences allow the teacher to be more explicit about the expectations he or she has for the student, which helps create a good student-teacher relationship. It also gives the students an opportunity to paraphrase the feedback back to the teacher to check for understanding and create a more reflective, self-regulating student. Closing the achievement gap between white students and minority students is a challenging task, but one that must succeed to ensure a future population of productive, well-informed citizens who are capable of navigating the complex world in which they live. This year, narrowing the achievement gap at Walter Johnson High School has become the focus of the school improvement plan. By engaging in a student learning objective that uses strategies from culturally relevant pedagogy, such as relationship building and feedback, I hope to help Walter Johnson achieve their goal. 2 strategies will comprise an intervention to improve student achievement: feedback on small labs and student-teacher conferences to discuss the student's performance on small labs and steps that can be taken to improve not only small lab grades, but overall class performance. Students who qualify for the intervention must meet the following criteria: be enrolled in honors biology in either the 3rd, 6th, or 7th periods, and have an ineligible status and/or an overall grade of D or E by the midpoint of the first quarter, which is September 30th, 2016. Small labs, those that are approximately 1/3 the point value, 25 to 35 points, of large labs, will be the focus for the SLO intervention. The units covered during the first semester focus on the overarching biology theme of structure determining function. The next generation science standards that this unit aligns to are under the heading From Molecules to Organisms, Structures and Processes. Small labs were chosen for the focus of this SLO for a variety of reasons. Students will complete significantly more small labs during the intervention period than large labs. Additionally, small labs serve to review concepts or provide technical practice that students must master prior to conducting large labs successfully. Therefore, it is expected that increased performance on small labs will have a positive influence on large lab performance. Lastly, labs make up 20% of the overall class grade in honors biology. Though small labs are only worth between 25 and 35 points, there are many of them. Therefore, improved performance on small labs may translate to improved performance on large labs worth 100 points, and therefore increase overall class grades. The small labs will cover a variety of topics throughout the first semester as part of the overarching theme of structure determining function. The standards that this theme aligns to include HS LS1-1 through HS LS1-7. By the end of the intervention period, students should improve their small lab performance by 1 letter grade and their overall grade by half a letter grade. 2 main strategies will be used to improve small lab grades: feedback and student-teacher conferences. When students hand in small labs, explicit feedback will be written on the small lab. Explicit feedback has been found to be an effective tool for improving student performance, especially when it is clear and informs students where they are going, how they are progressing, and what they need to do next. Students who qualify for the intervention will then meet with the teacher to discuss the feedback provided and to discuss how they can improve their performance on the next small lab. This conference serves 2 main purposes. First, It helps to foster the student-teacher relationship, which has been well documented in improving student performance by creating a reflexive and collaborative dialogue between the student and teacher. Second, it promotes student reflection and responsibility by helping students develop their own internal feedback. Student-teacher conferences will be scheduled during lunch or after school and must be held either the same day of receiving small lab grades or the next day to prevent students from forgetting processes used to complete the small lab and to prevent students from further strengthening misconceptions. Baseline data will include the student's overall grade and average small lab grades from the start of school to September 30th, 2016, the midway point of the first quarter. There will be a 1-week period after the baseline data is taken for analysis and to notify students who qualify for the intervention. The intervention period will then begin October 10th, 2016, and continue for a period of 5 weeks to November 11th, 2016, the end of the first quarter. To determine if the instructional strategies are effective, small lab grades, large lab grades, and overall grades will be tracked during the intervention period for both individual students and as an average of student performance. In addition, the grades of the final small lab assigned during the intervention period will be compared to baseline small lab grades. Students should show consistent improvement on their small lab grades throughout the intervention period, culminating in at least 1 letter grade improvement in their small lab grade by the end of the intervention. Large lab grades and overall class grades will also be tracked and compared pre- and post-intervention, though the effects are not expected to be as robust. For large labs, this is due to the fact that the concepts techniques practiced in small labs only make up a small amount of the total points available in the large labs. Overall grades are also affected by many other assessments. However, as labs constitute 20% of the total biology grade, if students consistently improve throughout the intervention period on their small labs, their overall class grade would be expected to improve by half a letter grade as well. Collection of baseline data will end at mid-quarter and consist of overall grade and average small lab grade. The intervention period will begin on 10/10/16 and last for 5 weeks until 11/11/16. Grades will be tracked throughout the intervention period and pre- and post-intervention grades will be compared. Students qualifying for intervention as of 9/30/16. 1 male student is ineligible, 1 student is Black, and 2 female students are multiple races. The ineligible student is also considered to be a remedial English language learner. No students have IEP or 504 plans. Summary of small and large labs. Within the baseline collection period, students completed 2 small labs and 1 large lab. During the intervention period, 1 small lab and 2 large labs were completed. Student attendance to the student-teacher conferences. Students eligible for the intervention were given lunch passes for student-teacher conferences to discuss errors on their small and large labs. Only student AR participated consistently in the student-teacher conferences. Both student AW and KL participated once, while students PWG and TL did not participate. Average small lab performance before the intervention was compared to the small lab grade during the intervention. 1 student performed slightly better, though still received an E. 2 students, AW and PWG, failed to submit the assignment, and 2 students, KL and TL, performed below the baseline. 1 large lab was completed during the baseline collection period, while 2 large labs occurred during the intervention. 3 students, AR, KL, and TL, showed improvement between baseline data and the second large lab. However, only 1 student, KL, showed consistent improvement on large labs during the intervention period. The class grades of students were tracked throughout the intervention period. Students did not consistently improve their grades as the intervention continued. Only students AR and TL showed improvement. The last class grade recorded during the intervention period was recorded on 11/7/16. These class grades were then compared to the baseline class grades, which were recorded on 9/30/16. Students AR and TL showed improvement, while students AW, KL, and PWG showed slight decreases in class grades. There was almost no correlation between the small lab grades and the class grades. A very slight correlation could be seen between large lab grades and class grades for some students, AW, AR, and PWG. But overall, small lab grades and large lab grades did not significantly impact the class grade during the intervention period. As the data showed, the first goal of improving small lab performance by 1 letter grade was not met. In fact, only 1 out of the 5 students showed improvement, which was slight. The second goal of improving class grades by half a letter grade was met with 2 students. Student AR improved by 1 letter grade, while student TL improved by half a letter grade. The class grades of the other 3 students decreased at the end of the intervention period. Moreover, there was nearly no relationship between the small and large lab grades with the class grade. Overall, the data collected during the intervention period is inconsistent and unreliable. Only 1 small lab, which was the major focus of the SLO, occurred during the intervention period, which was much less than anticipated. Because this was the only small lab recorded, there was no opportunity to measure student improvement over time. Additionally, there is much variation in the format of small labs. Some require students to create paper models. Students may use microscopes to record observations, or students create paper models in groups. In the beginning of the year, students are still learning the routines required for these different formats. Therefore, as students are introduced to the different formats, their performance in later labs that have similar formats may improve. Again, this was not something that could be studied with the limited data set. There was slightly more success with large lab grades. 2 students improved by a letter grade, while the performance of the other 3 students either decreased or remained the same. There was no correlation between improvement on small labs and improvement on large labs as expected. Again, a small sample size of both small and large lab grades could account for this. In addition, students may inherently put more effort into large labs than small labs because of the higher point value attached to them. Students who improved their large lab grades from baseline to during 3 tend to have more intrinsic motivation. Student AR attended student-teacher conferences consistently and also came for help with other assignments and before unit tests. Student TL also began participating and asking for assistance in class more often. This could account for their improvement on large lab grades. Both students AR and TL also met the SLO goal of improving their class grades by half a letter grade. Because there was no correlation between small lab grades nor large lab grades and class grades, it is possible that these students are improving in other areas such as homework assignments, quizzes, and/or unit tests. Student KL only attended 1 student-teacher conference, but began participating more in class and asking for assistance in class more often, which could account for better performance on large labs. However, this student also missed over a week of class due to anxiety. The absence affected the student's performance on a unit test and is a possible reason why the improved large lab grades are not reflected in the class grade at the end of the intervention period. Students AW and PWG showed the least amount of improvement, and their class grades decreased at the end of the intervention compared to baseline class grades. Both students often have difficulty paying attention in class and could use improvement in organizational skills. Though student AW attended one student-teacher conference, AW arrived during the last 5 minutes of lunch, leaving little time for an in-depth discussion that could lead to improvement. The short time period of the intervention could also have skewed the data for these two students. Both students began participating in class more toward the end of the SLO and into the post-SLO period. Although the SLO intervention period is over, I will continue to invite these students to student-teacher conferences and work on developing a relationship with them in an effort to improve their performance. Relationship building and providing feedback have been discussed as effective strategies in CRP. Though these strategies were used to meet the goals of this SLO, the goals were not met. Many factors contributed to the goals of the SLO not being met. The main factor was the length of the intervention period, which only lasted about 1 month, and included only 3 lab assessments, and students seemed to begin to become more active during class and comfortable asking questions at the end of the intervention period. Building relationships with students take time. I believe that given more time, students may have shown more improvement in small lab grades as they became more comfortable with me.